Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Fitz. Welcome to a VGC 19 Ultra Series discussion. So since Ultra Series will be starting in April, we're going to take a look at some of the teams that might be pervasive as well as some of the individual Pokemon in the next few videos. And, we're going to try to get those out before everybody starts their battle spot. Some people are already starting some showdown laddering. But from some of the early results from Ultra Series in at least online, it seems like some of the archetypes are going to be a little different from VGC 16, which is good. Should be kind of a fresh format. But today we're going to zero in on Mega Pokemon in Ultra Series. So in Sun Series and Moon Series, Megas were not allowed, which means that we haven't used Megas in many months since the 2018 World Championships. So should be interesting to see what people bring. There's a lot of potential Megas that could have some success. We're going to take a look at the top 5 that may or may not find their way into a lot of regionals and big event top cuts. So there's more than 5 that are really viable right off the bat. So we're going to pare down that list a little bit. Things that may see use but weren't able to make this cut are Pokemon that are really, really fast. So there's only a few Pokemon that are faster than base 130, which will be a big speed tier in Ultra Series. And so the things like that, like Sceptile, like Manectric, and maybe lesser like Mewtwo Y and Aerodactyl may see use. Some of those have really good pre and post Mega Evolution abilities, which means that they can be somewhat supportive while being able to get off very quick hits. So there are definitely things that could be seen, but later into the format, when teams get bulkier and you need more consistent damage in Pokemon, I think we'll be seeing the 5 Pokemon that we're gonna discuss in a second. So one dark horse contender that I left off that list, it's a little slower, that I think could see use is Mega Houndoom. It's mainly for very, very hyper offense teams, but it could have use based on both its supportive and attacking moves. So what makes Mega Houndoom different from most non-restricted Pokemon is its damage output ability. It has Flash Fire, which is a fairly good pre-Mega Evolution ability. Can't get hit by fire types and gets a boost from them. It loses that when it gets Mega Evolution, so it's not the most synergistic, for example, Mawil's Intimidate or Lightning Rod as a pre-Mega Evolution ability, but it's an alright one. The real calling card for Houndoom is its Solar Power ability upon Mega Evolution. So in the Sun or the Harsh Sun in Ultra Series, Mega Houndoom's moves will get a 50%, I believe, damage increase. So it's kind of like having a free life orb on Mega Houndoom with base 140 special attack. That's really, really nice. There are Pokemon like Heliolisk and Charizard that were used in Sun and Moon series that have the same ability, but on a Mega Evolution Pokemon, it's going to be even stronger. The cost of having the Sun up with Solar Power ability is 10% of your health every turn, no matter if you use an attacking move or not. So that's a little bit different than Life Orb, but they kind of have similar similarities. As long as the Sun is up. So it doesn't seem like the most obvious choice, since it doesn't really handle with Groudon's weaknesses, but it can still be really strong, mainly because it gets some supporting moves that can help out Groudon, like Taunt, Feint, and especially Roleplay, which is really going to be a key part of Ultra Series. Roleplay allows you to copy Groudon's ability. You lose your Solar Power, but you get the benefit of getting Harsh Sun back up if you were to lose it to Delta Stream or to Primordial Sea. So Its attacking moves that can hit very hard in either Dark Aura or in Harsh Sun are Dark Pulse, plethora of fire moves like Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Heat Wave. Overheat actually would probably be the best one, and it gets Foul Play as well, which is kind of nice. So it's not gonna be prevalent on every single person's team, but I think Mega Houndoom was worth including in this video as kind of a dark horse contender, or dark devilish dog contender. So yeah, maybe it's worth trying out, maybe at local events before you bring it to some major. So with that, we will move on to our top 5. So coming in at number 5 is going to be Mega Metagross. So Metagross isn't a Pokemon that might be on everybody's top 5 starting Ultra Series as a Mega. It's not the obvious choice. In pretty much every format, every year that Mega Metagross has been allowed, Metagross has definitely shined. You know, it's definitely one of the highest tier Megas. But in this series, it seems like people are sleeping on it. Although it's a, good check to Xerneas's, a lot of the other new restricted Pokemon handle Metagross pretty well. So it doesn't seem like an obvious contender for one of the best Megas. But it makes our list at number 5, mainly because it has a great speed tier, it has great stats across the board, and is able to get off damage usually before most Pokemon. It also has very, very nice coverage, able to use mostly any move. So with that combination, as well as its pre-Mega Evolution ability and Clear Body, which acts similar to Solgaleo, it's pretty much played the same way as well. But it shuts down Intimidates from things like Incineroar, and Intimidate spam with certain archetypes like Gengar are going to be very popular. So not being able to intimidate a great physical attacker until turn 2 at the earliest, sometimes turn 3, is kind of a thorn in most team sides. So that's kind of where Metagross thrives, is the abilities that it was given. It also has, as a pseudo legendary, like some of the highest base stat totals possible. It only has 80 base HP, so it doesn't become the most bulky tanky thing, but its defense and special defense are very solid, and then its attack power with Tough Claw's ability, once it's mega'd, is incredibly strong. So Tough Claws, even though it doesn't sound like it, gives the boost to every move that makes contact. So it doesn't just give it to like punch-based moves or something like that. So things like Iron Heads and Headbutt also get the boost. Lets it hit incredibly hard. Lets other Tough Claws also helps out things like Charizard X. But in this format, a Steel typing is going to be really, really nice. And the Psychic typing isn't a death blow. Obviously, things like Yveltal and Lunala, will really cherish that. But things like Ultra Necrozma might not do so well against it. So it's something that definitely checks some of the early contenders for like hyper offense teams like Tapu Lele, Necrozma, and teams like that. So Metagross, I think, will definitely succeed. It has all the elemental punches as well, which allows it to have different coverage moves based on team need. So definitely a Mega that can be splashed around on teams if you're not really sure what you need to add. The downside is that even though it's very fast, it definitely has many more Pokemon in this format that it's slower than, whereas in past formats, had an elite speed tier. So there's definitely starting to be a theme here where most of these Pokemon that are on this list have great pre and post Mega Evolution abilities, and number 4 is no different. Number 4, we have Mega Salamence. So speaking to those abilities, you have Intimidate as a pre-Mega Evolution ability. You could run Moxie, I suppose, if you wanted to base your team around Salamence, but probably not going to be used very often. And its Mega Evolution ability is Aerolate, which gives a boost, not as good as 2016 boost, but still a nice boost to normal type attacks, and turns them into flying type attacks by Salamence. The one downside of abilities like Aerolate in this format is there's a lot of skill swap, and skill swap will potentially from things like Tapu Lele could render Salamence completely useless, turning its double edges and hyper voices into normal type moves, non-stab. It's going to be very, very weak. But the Salamence is a very easy Pokemon to use. It fits onto a few of the top archetypes, especially like Groudon, Xerneas, and it gives you a Pokemon that can both Tailwind, be a supportive Pokemon for the others, as well as get some strong attacks off, both spread damage with Hyper Voice and very strong move in Double Edge, which is one of the stronger Mega moves that we're going to talk about from any of these Pokemon on this list. So Salamence is going to be a fairly easy Pokemon to use, but fairly predictable, where it'll probably have the same 4 moves on most teams. It could have, tech moves like Draco Meteor if you had a huge dragon weakness, but, teams are going to be prepared for it and kind of have a game plan for it. And things like hidden power on opposing teams might not be immediately obvious and could definitely take down Salamence very quickly. Also in mirror matchups against opposing Xerneases, Salamence might not be able to pull its weight, especially once Geomancy is set up. So the most surprising Pokemon to this list is going to be next at number 3, and that is Mega Lucario. So Lucario is a singles Pokemon god, right? It was a Pokemon that when X and Y was introduced, very, very quickly got banished to Ubers and never seen in the singles community again, besides on BattleSpot. Lucario never really had a great time in VGC, however, just because it's very frail and doesn't really provide the damage output that one would expect, especially from its singles prowess. Lucario also suffers from another major detriment, which is 4 move slot syndrome. So Lucario, in theory, off the top of my head, might be the Pokemon that could run more legitimate, important moves to its moveset than pretty much any Pokemon out there. It has support moves. It has physical great moves. It has great special moves, but you can't run them all, and that's its biggest detriment. It can't really fully take advantage of having 140 plus physical and special attack upon Mega Evolution. You just can't. You just don't have enough move slots, especially if you need things like Protect and other support moves. So you kind of have to pick and choose. And, in this format, the default Lucario might be a little predictable. So it's the Pokemon that's trending the most, and it's yet to be seen if it becomes a top tier Pokemon, but I think number 3 is fair now. It might not rise much higher than that. It could dip to something like 6 or 7 by the end of Ultra Series, but I think it's going to be on a lot of teams regardless. So where it really shines now is protecting its restricted Pokemon, and that's with moves like Follow Me. Especially, there aren't many Follow Me users, and it's, I believe, the only one that resists poison, and it does well against Steel as well, where a lot of Follow Me users aren't the best at protecting Xerneas in that way. I guess Smeargle is probably the best Follow Me user for Xerneas. It also has Quick Guard, which makes it one of the fastest Quick Guard users out there. It only really cannot block fake outs from things like Weavile, but it can block extreme speed from anyone. It can block Talonflame, Brave Birds, and things like that. So Quick Guard is definitely not something to be slept on, even if it's not the standard Lucario set. And the moves that are going to be attacking moves for Lucario are more than likely going to be physical, things like Close Combat and Iron Head, or Meteor Mash possibly, if the damage calc for Xerneas requires it. It also has Feint, which is kind of nice. Not the best for a frail Pokemon to have faint. You'd rather it on bulky Pokemon, but Lucario could definitely run that as well. Like I said, it has a plethora of other options. On the special side, it has priority moves like Bullet Punch, and actually it gets like pretty much every priority move. So you could run those. It doesn't seem likely that you would, but yeah, you could talk about Lucario for hours and still not be completely finished with them. The only downside really for Lucario is that it doesn't have the great ability synergy like some of the other megas on this list do. It gets Inner Focus or Justified as pre-mega evolution abilities, so you could definitely threaten like Snarlers, and you could withstand a fake out as well, which is kind of nice. But they're not really as great abilities as like Intimidate or Lightning Rod. So the last two megas on this list aren't going to be overly surprising to anyone, and number 2 is going to be Mega Gengar. So Gengar, since it got its mega evolution, has been one of the brightest megas in every single format. So in 2016, its difference to now is that as a pre-mega evolution ability, it lost Levitate, which is very good against things like Groudon. It now has Cursed Body, which is good, but not as good. So it definitely has that as a way to balance it out a little bit. But where it really comes into play is its great post-mega ability, which is Shadow Tag. Shadow Tag blocks, keeps every non-ghost type on the field, and any Shadow Tag users can leave as well. Things like with U-Turn or Shed Shell, I guess, could also do the same, but Shadow Tag allows for some unique archetypes where you get Intimidate spam, Snarl spam, and you have some cool switching around that you can do with U-Turn as well to get Gengar back in and back out very nicely without taking damage, and you eventually wear down your opponent or weaken the damage output of your opponent until you can set up with something like a Xerneas or Groudon or Rayquaza. I guess not Rayquaza, but yeah, basically it sits at a great base 130 speed, which is kind of the standard speed that everybody's going to be looking at in this format. They also, it was also quite an often used speed tier in VGC 18. So one negative for Gengar in this format is that base 130 speed tier is incredibly important. Can't really negotiate too much with that tier. In VGC 18, the second place winner at Worlds, Emilio Forbes, used a very bulky Gengar, and it helped him get to finals. But once it was able to be prepped against in finals, where Paul Ruiz's Salamence was able to outspeed it. So, bulky Gengar makes a ton of sense on a lot of teams and against a lot of archetypes. But in this format, with Necrozma being just 1 point slower than Gengar, Gengar really needs every single point of speed. And that kind of causes problems for it. It doesn't allow it to be as bulky, or it has to give up special attacking power, both of which aren't great options. It's still going to get a lot of use nonetheless, and its base 130 speed tier buddies, like Tapu Koko especially, don't love being in that matchup against it. They don't really want to risk the speed tie as much as Gengar is more or less okay with, testing out that 50-50. So Gengar is definitely going to see a lot of use, and it's something that everybody has to have an answer for. A lot of the early ideas are running Scarfers, which isn't surprising, and Tapu Lele kind of is in the lead as something that can outspeed Gengar with a Scarf and take it out in one hit. Just to finish off Gengar, Gengar has a great few moves to take advantage of. While it's known mostly for Shadow Ball and Sludge Bomb, not every team is going to carry both, and things like Disable and Icy Wind are both great options depending on what support Pokemon Gengar is paired with. So number one on this list is going to be a personal favorite for this format for me. I think Mega Rayquaza is going to be a very, very good Pokemon. So, with a little history lesson in 2016 in the restricted format of Alpha Sapphire Mega Ruby, at the beginning, Rayquaza wasn't considered the best Pokemon. You're giving up a lot of your team's wiggle room to be able to run a restricted and a mega at the same time. That's why things like Mega Mewtwo aren't really seen a ton, because you're investing, you're going all in with that one Pokemon. It didn't seem like something that was great. And then by the end of that format, U.S. Nationals and then Worlds with Wolf Glick's team, with Kyogre, Rayquaza was seen, proved why it was so good. Rayquaza in this kind of format works with basically any water or fire type, where almost every other team can't really run them comfortably because their water and fire moves could be evaporated instantly, which is a huge problem. Rayquaza stops a lot of that. It's really hard to turn the weather in your favor when Rayquaza in a pre-Mega Evolution ability has Airlock, which works like Cloud9, and post-Mega Evolution has Delta Stream. So it's really, really hard for Groudon and Kyogre to get the upper hand on Rayquaza, which makes it a huge, huge threat to the biggest things that you have to worry about in the format. Rayquaza, like Lucario, has almost access to any move in the game, but a lot of those moves aren't going to be obvious choices for it when Dragon Ascent basically is stronger than almost all of those moves, no matter the Pokemon, unless it's a 4 times weakness, if you're taking advantage of a 4 times weakness. So a lot of early teams are going to have pretty standard Rayquaza sets, and that's usually going to be Focus Sash, could be Life Orb. That's the best part of Rayquaza, that it can run an item in addition to Mega Evolution, which is kind of cheating against the other Megas on this list. But it definitely has some useful items. It could also run some crazier stuff like Assault Vest with Icy Wind, which is an idea. Rayquaza's downsides are that it's not the fastest Pokemon in the format. There's a new dragon in town, Necrozma, which outspeeds it after Ultra Burst. And there are some fairy types that are going to be faster, like Tapu Koko, which might not be able to KO one hit, but can still do massive damage, and Tapu Lele, which can outspeed it with Scarf, which can prevent extreme speed, which Rayquaza really wants to run, and can be an overall nuisance. So, Rayquaza would fix a lot of teams in Moon and Sun series that have trouble with grass types, have trouble with chlorophyll users, but teams are going to look completely different in Ultra series, and that's because of Rayquaza. There's going to have to be a lot more answers for Rayquaza, and not just the default ones. You have to expect everything. The one thing that teams can look forward not to expecting from Rayquaza is Z moves, which Rayquaza cannot run. So that's one helpful fact to mitigate this beast. But Rayquaza is going to be used a lot, and people are going to have answers for it. In addition to Tapu Lele, things like Serena or Bruxish, I suppose, could really stop extreme speed, which after a Swords Dance can be very scary. But Intimidate users are also going to help, and most teams aren't going to see special Rayquazas, and if they do, it's probably going to be a mixed Life Orb set with Dragon Ascent anyway. So that's the main part that has to be taken care of first. But I think it's going to be a Pokemon that you're going to see at top level events and top cutting all of those events. So that's the list. Top 5 Mega Evolutions in Ultra series. If you guys have any feedback for me continuing these series, let me know. And if you have any disagreements or any comments on things that I might have missed on these top 5, or a different mega that you think definitely deserves a spot on the list, let me know. Hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.